Hey everybody, Dave Clark, aka the Pattern Guy. Hey, welcome to another Chalk Talk. Today I'm going to be talking about mounting and gating a little bit. I did a smaller job in the last video I did. I want to start explaining a little bit of the stuff that, you know, why I do things or why we don't do things like that. Okay, real quick too, I used a angle block there too. Okay, so guys just starting out and everything, you know what, make your own, especially if you're just doing wood stuff. You know, I definitely wouldn't, you know, clamp this up on a Bridgeport and machine stuff off, you know, but this one I have around, you know, just for real quick wood things. You know, you can double side tape a piece of wood on there, go sand it, you know, on the sander, you know, something to hold, you know, things that'll just keep things square for you, okay? I mean, this was easy for me to make because I got that nice big sander in there, but you know, there's ways that you can make it by hand and that also. Just, you know, make sure you get a real good square joint. Most of the miter saws nowadays, they're really good with that. So, you know, think about making your own. I put a little gusset in there for, you know, handle, a little bit of strength in that. You know, I use that quite a bit though. I keep it on the bandsaw or use things. All right, so let's get down to mounting and gating and why I do certain things the way I do them, okay? So one of the things, like I said, you know, one of the biggest things is pins, okay? So you got to have pins to locate your job to each other, okay? So what happens, say this is your match plate, okay? Let's put a pattern on. Most patterns, not all, are double-sided, okay? So we have our flask around. Okay, you got your flask around your pattern. Alright, then we got the little ears that stick out. I'm not going to draw the gussets on here. Okay, and then we got our pins that stick up. Okay, so what I was saying in one video is this is the way I would recommend doing your flasks, okay? Because it's the thing where, you know, when you're pulling this cope half up here, you want to have your bushings riding on that pin to keep that cope coming up nice and straight so you don't rub the sides of your mold and ruin your mold, okay? You want to try to get that up. So if you didn't have those pins, you're just trying to, you know, you just try to pull this up, you're going to be bouncing your mold all over that pattern in there, and it's not going to come out, okay? So from here, like I said too, okay, a lot of the flasks have, you know, you can take the pins off, put different size pins in there. I mean, you know, we're not going to be able to do that kind of stuff, right? So just put some on there that are fairly long. All right, one of the things here, let's get rid of this whole thing here. All right, so another thing we got with your match plate, okay? So if you're making it wood, metal, you know, whatever, okay? We got our match plate, and then we got our clearance holes for the pins and bushings, or, you know, whatever you use. Like I said, what I do, I'm going to put these off to the side so we don't, you know, run into them, okay? I make these little plates out of 1/8" stock. Alright, now one, I put a slot in it. Okay, now the other one, I put around in her. So I always put 5/8, like if I do the wood ones with the wood dowel, it's 5/8 dowel. The metal ones I'm putting 5/8 steel pins in, okay? So what happens with these is when you put your flask onto your match plate here, all right, this one pin, right, that'll be coming through your hole there. But what will happen is that basically makes it so the pattern's not, or your flask isn't going to move on that match plate, okay? There's no way for it to move, okay? Now you see the slot down here, you say, well, that's, you know, got some give. Well, it does, and it has to. Okay, so like I was saying in the one video at Arrow, we used to do a lot of big jobs in solid flasks, and, you know, they would pour them in there and that. So when they would knock those out, you know, they'd take them down the end of the line. They had a little shakeout thing in the end of the line, and it, you know, all the sand would go down into a pit, into a conveyor and that. We'll do the sand systems one of these days. So what they would do, and then the guy would grab this big, you know, 1.25 inch rod and just start banging the crap out of that flask. Well, they're crapping the flask up. They're bending them and that. So your pin centers on those were just fluctuating, okay? So, you know, you got to have a little bit of play in there. Otherwise, you know, if you're using a dozen different flasks, those pin centers are not going to stay the same, okay? So you'll have this solid one. It'll get your lateral. It won't move laterally. And then horizontally, it's not going to move, okay? So down here, if you have this slot in here, well, it's not going to move horizontally, okay? But it's not going to let the flask move laterally either because it's already locked down here, okay? But if the pin center is like 1/8 of an inch off from the flask you used before, you know, the pin itself can move in there, but it's going to be the same because it's locked by this one, okay? So I hope you get it. It's kind of a lot of, it's kind of hard to just to figure that one out, but that's the way you gotta have it. You gotta have a little bit of play in there, okay, for your different flasks, okay? So when you get ready to make your flasks and your pin centers and all that stuff, what I would suggest is like I said, I standardize everything as much as I can, okay? So all my flasks are like 10, 12, 12, 14. I use the even numbers for everything, all right? And what I end up doing, let's get rid of these things here. Okay, so say we got our 14, 18 flask, okay? And then like I said, we got the ears coming out here. Those are big ass ears here. Alright, so the way we do this all the time, okay, so there'll be numbers. You'll say, like your customer will say, hey, I need this to be mounted on a 12-18 flask. Okay, so you got 12 is going to be, first number is going to be your width. Alright, and then the second number will be your length. Alright. So when you make your flasks, what I always do, I have the 18 inch, my length, all right, and then I can't remember the exact number. I probably should have done it here, but what I did, it's like you add 1.5 inches to your center or something like that, you know, 1.5 inch, or, you know, something like that. So my pin center on here, my pin center is this PC, right? You add 3 inches to it, right? So for a 18 flask, it'll be 21 inches, all right? Actually, it's gonna be a little more too, because you gotta, you know, do your whatever width your material is that you make your flask out of, you know, but you get the gist of it, okay? So say I gotta make a 16-18 flask, all right? We'll change this to a 6, all right? My pin center is going to be the same, okay? The length of it, just keeping the same, okay? There's no reason to change it, but you know, you can do, you know, you can always interchange things, you know, but just try to keep, you know, your pin centers, you know, all the same, standardize everything as much as you can. All right, so there's that. Well, here, how the next step, okay, you pick out, you know, you have your pattern made, okay? So you pick out what size board that you're going to put it on, what size flask and that, okay? So 9 times out of 10, if you're doing this for a customer, owner of the foundry or an engineer or whatever, they're going to tell you what size flask, pin centers, all that stuff. Okay, so I want to show you, and they'll tell you where they want to mount it on the board also, because lots of different reasons, and I'll try to get to as many of them as I can, but there's a whole bunch of different things. And then, like I said, I have a very eccentric customer. He does stuff you just unorthodox, but like I said, the guy gets awesome castings out all the time. Okay, so all right, so one of the times, one of the things I made in my career with my old foreman Joe, we actually made a huge oil pan. So it was actually for a train engine. I think it was a GE train engine, I think, big diesel engine. It was like 4 feet wide, 3 feet high, and like 16 feet long. Held like 700 gallons of oil or something. So it is huge. But anyhow, just say I want to do an oil pan, okay? Say I built an oil pan and I want to mount it on a board, okay? So here's a couple things. One of the things you want to put, most engineers, most founders, put as much into the drag as you can, all right? So here's a reason why. All right, here's my oil pan. Okay, so I'll just put dotted lines here. All right, so there's my oil pan. Okay, a little crude, but you get the gist. Okay, so most oil pans, obviously, they got a flange around them so that they can mount on to the engine block, right? So they're machined, okay? So when you pour the metal, let's put a gating system on here, and this is another thing that determines cope or drag, okay? All right, let's just do this too. We're in the cope here, and we got the drag down here. Drag, okay. So I'll put my sprue locator. We got the sprue, okay? Then I got my sprue bowl down here. All right, and I can't do this 3D, so let's just, your runner will be in here, okay? And then your in gate comes in here, okay? To feed into the casting. Okay, so what happens, the reason why I got this in the drag, several reasons. All right, so we pour the molten metal in here, okay? Even though it's metal, it's liquid, right? It's like water. What does it want to do? It wants to find the lowest point, right? So it's going to come down here. It's going to go in your, well, it'll go in the sprue bowl first and then out into your runner, okay? So a lot of times what happens, this sprue bowl is deeper than your runner, so it'll catch some of the crap. You'll get some turbulence in that. Then it'll start coming down your runner and then come in to your in gate and then feed your casting. Okay, now if I were to have this up here, right, we got, we'll draw it up here real quick. All right, let's say we put it in the cope. All right, dotted line there. All right, say this is my runner, okay, it's my in gate. I got this coming in here. Well, there's the height of my metal. I gotta push this metal up here. All right, that's like really hard to do. So you can do it, but what you have to do is you gotta put a whole bunch of risers around this thing to get pressure to push that metal up. So you could be melting twice the amount of metal, all that. It's just way easier to have it flow down into the drag. Okay, let gravity do the work for you. Okay, now the other reason why I would put this in the drag also is when you pour this metal in here, some of the metal, like I said, a lot of the garbage comes into here. We'll get into gating down the road too. I'll do a nice gating system one day. I'll show you why we do things on the gating. But what happens is when the metal comes down here, if there is crappy metal, all this crap crap floats. I'm gonna try to keep it PG. Crap floats, right? So you're gonna get crap up here. Well, guess what? That's gonna get machined off, right? So no big deal. Then down here, and if you guys know anything about engines, hopefully you do, you know, this is the bottom part of the oil pan, okay? That's gonna be real good, nice, solid metal, okay? So if I do it up here, right, all the crap is gonna float up here. So you're gonna have crappy metal, you know, up in, it's gonna end up down on the bottom, you know, you're gonna have chance for leaks and all that stuff, okay? So that's one of the reasons, you know, a couple of reasons, you know, why you want to pick, you know, where you want to mount stuff, coke drag in that, okay? And, you know, sometimes, you know, believe it or not, flask, you know, I do some work for a guy that does really, really bad. I mean, he'll pour like 6 tons of iron at a time. So, you know, his flasks are huge. He's got a limited amount of flask too. So, I mean, sometimes he's got to do things to fit in his flask too, you know, and that. But for the most part, you know, you're gonna try to mount everything, try to mount as much of it in the drag as you can. All right, and then, you know, we'll get into, like I said, we'll do a gating system. I'll show you a whole bunch of gating systems down the road too. Every gating system's different. It really is. So, and like I said, customer to customer, you know, they're all different in that. If you watch the video I just did where I just mounted those 3 little Y pipes on that one job, I didn't put any risers in there. I used the runner for a riser. Okay, that's starting to get, you know, if I were at Aero Aluminum, if I would have suggested something like that, oh man, no, you know, that you can't do that. You just, you know, but it worked. I'll show you the castings in a minute. We got some good castings out there. So anyhow, back to this stuff here. When you you know, when you're picking your flask too, you gotta remember you got gating systems coming in there, so you gotta adjust them, you know, where you're gonna, you know, mount them on your board for gating. So kind of design it, like I said, you know, in pattern making, you gotta just, everything that you do, you just gotta really, you know, plan ahead, because it just, you know, lumber wise in here, like I said, I don't have a ton of lumber, and I gotta go buy it. If I make a mistake, it comes out of my pocket. I don't have that big of a budget, you know, and that. So you want to try to, you know, and if you're just getting started out, definitely, you know. So what I usually do, I explained this in the last thing, but I was watching a video, you couldn't see it too much. Okay, so what I always do, here's my match plate. I cut my corners off too, especially like on the bigger ones. I don't want to be knocking into these things, you know. So my eccentric customer, he likes keeping them square because you'll drill holes on here to put a little vibrator out, you know. So he's like, well, where am I going to screw? Well, you move them in here, you know. All right, so what I do is right away I put center lines on, okay. So this lets me, well, what did I say the pin centers were in at 21 inches. So I'll mark my 21 inches out for my clearance holes. All right, then what I'll do is, what did I say, 14, 18. Okay, so I'll mark out my 14 inch line, 7 inches, or I'm sorry, 7 inches, 7 inches. And then 18, you know, 9, 9. Okay, so I'll put, that's the inside of my flask, okay? Next thing, you want, for the most part, mostly, you want it at least an inch away from your flask, all right, all the way around. So what I do is I got colored pencils, all right, I just put a green line around there for my 1 inch, all right. So I'll go into this a little bit more, why you want to do it, okay. We'll start it right now. All right, so I want 1 inch of sand between my flask and, let's do a pattern. Okay, so this is my inch mark, so I know I can mount my pattern. Let's just say it's that big. Okay, all right. So I can mount my pattern 1 inch away. That'll give me 1 inch of sand in between my flask and the molten metal for the most part, for aluminum and that should be pretty good. When you get into bigger, heavier iron, heavier metals, you know, you're going to want a little bit more. One of the customers I do stuff for, he does a lot of iron stuff. Like I'll put 2 inches of metal, but I mean, they're usually bigger castings too on that, okay? So then you leave a little bit of room up here too, and then, you know, you could put your gating system in up here, okay? So you always got to plan out, you know, once I build my pattern, okay, I got my pattern made, and then what I always do, I grab a board out, I'll just grab an oversized piece of plywood, I'll plop it on there, and I'll measure it out. I kind of lay it out on a big piece of plywood, kind of do it to the one side, figure out a little bit, and then I cut my board out there, you know, from there and that. But it's, you got to keep in consideration your, you know, your gating, and then you got to have, you know, so much room around the molten metal and your flask, especially the wooden flask, because they'll catch on fire, you know. So you gotta have plenty of room in there, but an inch is pretty good. Okay, here's one of the things I was saying before with that too. Okay, let's do a little cross-section view and get a little bit farther into this. I did those little round pieces, okay, and they were real small, so I didn't, you know, inches, it wasn't that big a deal. Okay, so here's, let's do my, this is looking at the side view this time. Okay, so I had those 3 round jobs on here, okay? So, you know, the round guys are like this, okay? So, how much room do you put in between castings too? Ask the guy that owns the foundry or the engineer, whoever you're working with, they'll let you know with that. If they don't tell you, if you're doing this by yourself, I was always told your thumb, people got different thumb thicknesses, so at times I always like to try to, like for square things, let's do a square thing, okay? If we got a couple square rectangular shapes, okay, all right, so these are a little different. Okay, so these are different from round because you can see there's going to be less sand there, okay? I mean, you want to avoid pieces like this because that's actually going to be a male part of the sand, okay? So just say you got your runner coming in here, your in gate, all right, that fills up this cavity. Well, there's a chunk of sand sitting here that could blow that over, okay, that chunk of sand in there. So you got to watch your sand thickness. So for square pieces, you want to spread them out a little bit farther, you know, for molding purposes. You know, you don't want your sand to wash away. It's what they call it, sand wash away. So with these round ones, you can cheat a little bit. You can bring them farther in because, you know, the farther around this radius you're getting, right, the farther away you're getting, okay? And then this right here with this radius, that sand right there is going to be way stronger than this piece of sand dangling right there, okay? So that, you know, that's other things you have to take into consideration, how you mount your patterns into your onto your match plates, you know, so you can make your mold. So like I said, there's probably a lot more. I know there's a lot more that we can you know, do this. Gating's a big thing too. All right, but hopefully we'll be in this with the long haul, so, you know, hopefully we'll be able to show you all kinds of different examples. You know, that's my goal here, okay? But we'll try to get as much of the, you know, specific information as we can to you in that, and try not to bore you too much in that. But this is, like I said, I want guys to start learning this trade again and getting it going, the foundry business. And that I'll let you know as much as I know. If you guys have any questions or anything, just you know, jot them down, you know, in the comment section. You know, give me comments or whatever. If you guys have questions on something you're working on, please just let me know. I'll give you you know, you have a suggestion for something you guys want me to go over, and that we'll do it. Real quick before I let you go, let me check out these castings here real quick. Okay guys, I made these nuts again for my Warner and Swayze buddy. If you look at that, nice, that's where we cut them off, okay, nice and solid, okay, no, there's no porosity in there, so he should be good solid castings. Alright, I made 6 of those. I gotta do those, I gotta get those going. Okay, here's a little Y pipe. Okay, so like I said, I'm gonna get together with the customer for these and see if he's, you know, thinks these are acceptable, and if he gives me the okay, then we'll start making. I gotta make 32 patterns off of that 3 cavity mold. We'll pour those 10, 11 times, right, and then I'll show you how to mount and gate all these. Okay, so until then, you know, we'll see if we can get up to the foundry again. Sorry, I forgot the camera yesterday. Maybe this Sunday I got to get up there again, like I said, and I'll try to take you guys up there, alright? So, but in the meantime, everybody have a good one out there, and everybody stay safe and healthy, okay? Have a good one, guys.